Can the Rams win the Super Bowl with this left tackle? That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramily, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available over on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, do us a huge favor and subscribe to the Locked On Rams YouTube channel. Join the party, trying to get to 14K before training camp, so head over there, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and also, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much confidence do you have in Alaric Jackson to be an above-average left tackle this season? Do you think he can get the job done for the Rams? And my name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. I've been covering LA sports for over a decade. Bleacher Report, 24/7 Sports, Dodgers Nation, SI. And as always, I'm joined by the Rams pre-half and post-game show host for the Rams flagship radio station, ESPN 710 LA. He's entering his 9th season covering your Los Angeles Rams, the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers. You can follow him on X at Travis Rogers. And on today's episode, we continue our countdown of the most important Rams heading into the 2024 season, and also the offensive line. Big questions about the O-line. We're going to answer them on this show. But first, this episode of Locked On Rams brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Travis. So we started this series, the big questions entering the season. And I think one of the big questions that was answered last offseason is the direction of this Rams team as far as what they're doing up front. You brought in Jonah Jackson. You re-signed Kevin Dotson. You moved Steve Avila, who had an excellent rookie season, to a position where he can be even better there in the center spot. You got the veteran Rob Havenstein back at right tackle. Big question is Alaric Jackson. Can A.J. Jackson do enough at the left tackle spot, Matthew Stafford's blind side, to really turn this offensive line that has the potential to be one of the best in the NFL? So A.J. Jackson, 1 sack allowed last season, 39 pressures. You definitely want to see him improve in that department, but I'm excited to see what he does this season.
I am too. And this kind of comes down to a very simple equation for me, that Sean McVay knows what he's doing. Right? Because you got to kind of look at it like that for me. The other 4 guys, I think you know exactly what you're going to get. You cross your fingers. You hope that they stay healthy. You hope that Steve Avila moving from left guard to center is a smooth transition. You hope that there's no issues there. I really don't anticipate there being any. Health, of course, is always the wild card for everybody when you step onto an NFL field. But I think that when you talk about it, the most important position on the offensive line is that left tackle. If you have a right-handed quarterback the way that Matthew Stafford is, like you mentioned, he's the guy that's protecting his blind side. And is he up for the job? I keep coming back to this. Like you talk about the pressures, you talk about the sacks allowed, not great, not terrible, kind of middle of the pack as far as that kind of stuff goes. I keep coming back to this. If the Rams, specifically Sean McVay and Les Snead, thought that that was a major problem, they would have done something to address it. They did not. That A.J. Jackson is going to be the guy that gets the opportunity to play that position. I think that he will be there. I think that he can hold it down. Is he Andrew Whitworth? Is he Anthony Munoz or Jonathan Ogden? No, he's not. He's not going to be that. But is he good enough to protect the blind side of an aging quarterback? Clearly, Sean McVay thinks so. Therefore, I'm going to sign up for that. In Sean McVay, I trust, as I've said many, many times.
You got to trust in Sean McVay and this organization. And I like what they did because, yes, we like Joe Alt. Yes, we like Fashanu. Yes, there were some premier left tackle possibilities that they might have been interested in trading up for. They were definitely expressing some interest in possibly trading up for Joe Alt. But the truth of the matter is that's a two-way street. And not a lot of teams moving up and down in this year's draft. So that wasn't an option. And also, because of Aaron Donald's retirement, you really had to focus on the defensive side. You had to get a Jared Verse. You had to get a Braden Fisk. It was more of a luxury to go out there and get a franchise left tackle, but you didn't do that. But what did you do? You reinforced the other positions with Jonah Jackson, with bringing back Kevin Dotson. Steve Avila had a really great first season in the NFL. But I think for me, A.J. Jackson, it's, can you just be a little above average, just a tiny bit above average, and stay healthy and be reliable? That definitely is going to bode well for this team because, like I mentioned earlier, 1 sack allowed, 39 total pressures. You want to improve there, but also as a run blocker. He had a 60.1 run blocking grade last season, a 67.2 pass blocking grade. So those aren't mind-blowing, wow type numbers. But when you consider what they do have as a unit, you have to kind of look at the sum of their parts, right? And I still think that Jackson has the potential to get it done. And quite frankly, Joe Noteboom is his backup, right? So I love to dive into juicy training camp position battles. There's really not one along this offensive line.
No, I think we know the 5 guys that you're going to have up front there in that opening game against Detroit, with the wild card, of course, always being the health of those 5 guys. But I think you're onto something. When you look at this is kind of the rising tide lifts all boats situations, that if we're a little bit better in these other places or we continue to improve in other places, then you can get by with Jackson at left tackle. Now, he, like to your point, D-Mac, he's got to be something other than just good enough. He's got to be a little bit better than average. That doesn't seem like a lot to ask from him. You talked about, we were talking a little bit before we started recording the pod, that last year was really the first time he had a chance to play a full season. It was really the first time that he had been healthy enough to kind of stay in that role and do it. And I do think he was better at the end of the year than he was at the beginning of the year. As long as you continue to show those sorts of improvements, I'm optimistic there. But I think you're right. I think that their priorities were clearly on the defensive side of the ball with the retirement of Aaron Donald. I think that clearly they feel like their offense is going to be explosive enough that they've got lots of weapons, whether it's the wide receivers. They draft Blake Corum to go with Kyron Williams in the backfield. They've got obviously a high-level quarterback to pull the trigger. That this isn't something that they felt, look, if this isn't way, way better, we're dead in the water. Clearly they were comfortable rolling it back. And I like what they did on defense. You can't fix everything every single season. And I think that they improved the most where they needed to improve the most, and that's on the other side of the ball.
That was definitely the area where you need to focus on. Then also, we know both lines on both sides really are where you needed to focus. The trenches, that's where you win championships. Yeah. But there is a reason to believe that A.J. Jackson can turn the corner and can continue to emerge, and that he hasn't peaked quite yet. We're going to get into that next here on Locked On Rams.
I love sports, right? I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, playoffs are pretty much done across the board, right? We get fewer and fewer games. And the sports aren't quite sportsing the way that you want them to. But FanDuel's got it. FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All you have to do is open that FanDuel app and dream up bets any time that I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up everybody, all customers, with a booster bonus daily. That's right, daily. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. I love baseball. There's a million ways to play baseball on FanDuel. So head on over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. And I'm telling you, we're getting into the stretch, right? Guys are going to start hitting the gas. Guys are going to start moving around a little bit, which is going to make FanDuel baseball even better. So go to FanDuel.com, start making the most out of every single summer night with all that baseball. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, a special shout out to those everyday listeners out there watching and listening to every single episode of Locked On Rams. Can't tell you how we appreciate you guys. Ran to some at Dodger Stadium yesterday. Wanted to tell you a big shout out. They say, hey, where's Travis at? So just like the other day, it's like, hey, man, maybe we should be at the same place one time, so because hey, they're both here. But got a lot of love yesterday at Dodger Stadium, Travis, and shout out to all those fans. Got a big year ahead of us, so lock in. You don't want to miss a thing about your Los Angeles Rams. So subscribe and watch and listen to every single episode. Now, here in our second segment, talk more about Alaric Jackson. I'm really fascinated just about this topic because if he finds something and he takes another step forward, then you're saying maybe this offensive line can go from a top 12 or 13 to maybe a top 5 or 6 or something in that realm. And that really takes this team to a whole nother level, especially when you consider that you have a aging Matthew Stafford that we know when he's healthy, he's elite, so you want to maintain that. And two, you've invested in the run game. Kyron Williams has emerged into one of the best backs in the NFL. You drafted Blake Corum in the 3rd round. So all of that, if it happens, it only helps this team. And with Alaric Jackson, let's just be honest, he did not get off to a good start last season. I mean, the first 8 games, lots of struggles, too many pressures. The pass blocking really wasn't where it needed to be. Then around week 8 against the Cowboys, it's something turned off for him. The light turned on for him, and you saw him take it to another level. I mean, he had 2 games where he kind of struggled against the Browns, against the 49ers, but then you got Myles Garrett. You got Nick Bosa, and Zadarius Smith, and Chase Young. So pretty understandable, but if you look at how he finished the season, if that momentum carries over into this year, then I think you have yourself a slightly above average left tackle that still has room to grow.
Think about how important offensive lines are. Let's just kind of take 3 seasons here, all of them in the Sean McVay era. Let's go back to the very first season that Sean McVay comes to LA. And what are the 2 people that he brings in to kind of solidify what's going on? He brings in Andrew Whitworth from Cincinnati, and we know how Big Whit kind of fit into this team and how he changed the culture and everything else. And he brought John Sullivan in to be the center. And all of a sudden, you had those 2 guys. You had Roger Saffold, who was a high-level NFL offensive lineman. You had Rob Havenstein over there at right tackle. And those 5 guys basically played the entire season. What happened? They won the division for the first time in forever. They go and they make a Super Bowl run the next season. This is the core of this team. Sure, Jared Goff was good. Sure, Ted Gurley was fantastic. And Robert Woods and Aaron Donald was Aaron Donald. Michael Brocker's on that side of the ball. Sure. But that offensive line just was terrific. Let's go to the year that they win the Super Bowl. You're talking about Andrew Whitworth playing a high level. Austin Blythe, somebody that they went and made a trade for, turned him into a high-level guy. You had all of these different players, and it was consistent. All 5 guys. Joe Noteboom filled in admirably when Andrew Whitworth goes down. That offensive line functioned incredibly well. What happens? They go and they win the Super Bowl. What happens the year after that? On opening night, the offensive linemen start to drop like flies. They have the worst season under Sean McVay. They go 5-12. I think, if I'm going by memory here, they played 16 different people on that offensive line over the course of that 17-game season, and it was a bust from the jump. Last year, it calms down again, right? They had Steve Avila in there, Alaric Jackson, maybe not the second coming of Anthony Munoz, but a good enough guy. Now, if we can go to that next level, I think that's the key to it. If those 5 guys stay healthy and function as a unit, and they don't all have to be all pros, but they have to be good together, the sky is really the limit for what they can do. If it's not good enough, nothing else matters. You can have everything right on your team. If your offensive line is banged up, if it doesn't function at a high level, nothing else matters. We can talk quarterbacks, running backs, scheme, this, that, and the other thing. If those 5 guys can't protect the quarterback, if those 5 guys can't get a push forward, nothing else matters. We know the 4 of them are going to hold it down. It's a question about that 5th guy.
Yeah, and you bring up a fantastic point as it relates to offensive lines. Continuity matters.
Yep.
Once you get 5 guys pulling on that rope at the same time for the entire year, you get that experience. There's a cohesion and a chemistry that builds, and that also played a big role into why things started to click for A.J. Jackson. Also, too, he's not asked to play any other positions. He's focusing solely on being the left tackle for the Los Angeles Rams, and that is what they're committed to. So more experience is only going to help him. I mean, 2022, he has the blood clots. Last year, the slow start. 2024, let's see what he can do. I mean, a part of me is always saying, give me the left tackle, right? If you don't have a left tackle, you're left out. We saw what happened with this team. Orlando Pace, elite left tackle, Super Bowl. Andrew Whitworth, elite left tackle, Super Bowl. When you have an elite left tackle, it takes you to another level. We could see the greatest show on turf 2.0, the greatest show on field turf 2.0 with an elite left tackle. But the truth of the matter is, it's almost like he's a placeholder while they figure that out. Who's the guy to trade for? Who's the guy to draft while you had to address the defense? So I have no issue with it at all whatsoever, but I do think that A.J. Jackson really has to have a chip on his shoulder this season because he knows the other guys are solidified. He knows the other guys, no one's taking their spots. He's the one spot where he's one of those early players where if he's giving up too many pressures, not opening up enough lanes, if Matthew Stafford is on his back, he's the one guy that social media will blow up about and saying, okay, we need a left tackle. Because I don't think the fan base is completely sold that he's that guy, and I think he's out to prove them wrong.
I hope so. Here's the other thing, because you have the other 4 spots pretty much under control, or at least theoretically you do, with Dotson and Jackson and Avila and Javi Havenstein right on down the line. You can help Jackson. You can give him the help that he needs. You can scheme to a certain point to allow him so he's not on an island constantly. Where it gets complicated is when you got to give a bunch of guys help, or you can't give anybody help because no one else is able to take care of their job one-on-one. The other 4 of those guys should probably win pretty consistently at those positions, which means if you do need to give them help with a tight end, if you do need to leave a running back in to help chip a guy coming off of that particular side, you can do that because you don't have to put those help in other places. You don't have to have help to the right side. You don't have to do a lot of different things. There are options when you only have to put one finger in the dam. You got a lot of options. It's when you got to put 4 fingers in the dam to fill all different holes that the water starts coming over the top and you're in all sorts of trouble. So if this stays the way it is, even if he's just what he was a year ago, I still think they can have success. To your point, if he shows up motivated, if he shows up ready to improve, ready to be better, ready to prove people wrong, then that's gravy, right? That could be a big step forward. But, I'm more of a pragmatist than anything else. And I kind of always assume you're going to give me what you've given me historically. And I think for Jackson, that's a competent performance. It's a slightly better than acceptable performance. And if that's what they get, I still think they can go win a lot of games with that.
Absolutely. And that really has to be the focus. And two, Travis, people act like all 32 teams have a left tackle that's a Pro Bowler, that's a all-pro caliber. It's like all 32 teams have a starting caliber level quarterback. Just because you're a starting quarterback in the NFL doesn't mean you're a starting quarterback caliber. Gardner Minshew and Bryce Young still has a lot to prove, right? There's a lot of quarterbacks in this league that are starting, and same thing with the left tackle position. So it's really only like 10, 15, 20 of these guys on the planet. And I think if you're the Rams, you're really making the most of what you can right now. I do think I'm planting my flag right now with the middle of that offensive line, with the improvement that Steve Avila, I think, is going to experience playing the position that he's best at, he's most optimized for. With Dotson, just absolutely being a revelation for this team last season, especially in the run blocking department, going with the gap scheme, just going with duo, changing things up from a schematic standpoint. I do think that this is the foundation of this team, and they're the reason why they're going to have double-digit wins. It's because of offensive line, because passing lanes, running lanes, and the passing game is going to benefit. They're going to be the big reason why this team has success in 2024.
If the offensive line is not good, they're not going to have success. It's as simple as one doesn't go without the other. Yet you're going to have both of those. I think that, kind of talking about how, there are 32 starting left tackles. It doesn't mean that they're all 32, caliber, starting players at that position. But you got to kind of ask yourself, could we get worse? Could it be worse if we go somewhere else? And I think the answer is yes. And I think that's part of the reason that they're proceeding the way that they are. We've seen what it looks like when Joe Nopum was there in a starting role, not nearly good enough. In a backup role, okay, fine. But you need to be careful about the proverbial grass being greener somewhere else. If good enough sometimes is good enough, and we'll see whether or not he is.
And this is something that I absolutely love. One of my favorite stats that I found this offseason is when you look at the start of the 2023 season up until now, the Rams offensive line has gone from the 24th heaviest in the NFL to the 3rd heaviest in the NFL. I like me some big nasties, some hog mollies, some road graders that are out there to bully dudes. I like the change up by the Rams from that standpoint too.
Well, that's a direct response to what the 49ers do to them. That is 1 + 1 = 2. The 49ers laid hands on the Rams. It was simple as that. And,
for sure.
The old adage in the NFL, win your division first, right? And they were really strong. The Niners were manhandling them. The Rams had the soft label or the schematic label, whatever you want. They were not that big, snot bubble group of guys. And then Steve Avila shows up, and then Kevin Dotson shows up, and all of these guys were much nastier and dirtier than the guys dirty in the best possible way. Just like, okay, we're here to do all of that too. And you can see last year the Rams were no longer being manhandled like that. They were a nasty group of guys last year.
Totally. When you're the top dog, you dictate roster construction in your division, in your conference, and in your sport if you have Super Bowl aspirations. So there's no doubt about that. But A.J. Jackson, breakout season in 2024, silencing his doubters this year. I can see it happening. But coming up next, we're going to continue our countdown of the most important Rams heading into the 2024 season. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. What we're Doug and I just talking about, we're talking about finding the right guy for that one particular position on the team, right, that we talk about every day, the Rams. But what are we talking about with your small business? You just don't want a guy or a woman. You want the right person for your job. And that's where LinkedIn comes in, because it's not just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to that perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. Post your job for free, not for flea. Fleas are different. You want to post it for free at linkedin.com/lockedon. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
And we are off and running here on Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, so we're going to continue our countdown. Top 20 most important Rams heading into the 2024 season. We're at 18 with Quentin Lake. So interesting thing about Quentin Lake is the versatility. He played safety last season. He played nickel last season. He had success in the star role. But what makes it interesting is Chris Shula's comments during the offseason, where the offseason OTAs, he said that Daron Kendrick and Russ Yeast, that they were doing, quote, well in the star role. So what does that mean for Quentin Lake? Does he go back to playing safety? I mean, he's a versatile player. You can see him in different spots, but I think that's something we're going to look at early on is how does the pecking order look on defense? How do they really want to utilize their talents?
Yeah, I think this kind of oddly enough kind of goes together with what we were talking about with the offensive line, but for the opposite reason, right? That because the defense has a lot of question marks, because you're trying to fill a number of different roles on that defense, a player like Lake who can do a lot of different things is really valuable. Like the Rams don't have a lot of questions on offense other than maybe left tackle. On defense, we've talked about safety. We've talked about corner. We've talked about edge. We've talked about, just about everything there is to talk about on the defense. So I think you're right. If what makes Quentin Lake valuable, whether he starts, at safety, whether he starts at corner, whether he starts in that star role or whatever it is, having a guy that can move around. Again, guys are going to get hurt. Guys are going to miss time. You're going to need to have guys that can just kind of for a day, a week, a month, a couple of games or whatever it is, fill in a place where maybe it's not their number one position. And I think that's why Lake is so valuable for the Rams, is because he can do a lot of different things.
That's what he does best. Deep safety, hook defender. You can cover the slot. You can line him up all over the field. You can put him in the box. But I also want to see what you can get from Quentin Lake when all he has to do is just try to be the best at one position, right?
Yeah.
I mean, kind of one of those things. You just the jack of all trades, master of none, right? I'd rather have him master one position, whether that be the safety spot, whether it be the star role. I do feel like you could probably pencil him in as the starting safety alongside Cameron Curl. And it's interesting to say that after the Rams did bring back John Johnson III, and he started to really get going towards the end of the season. So it's going to be a position battle for sure. And some of these young guys, they still have a lot to prove to this organization, but Lake has gotten better every year. He's only entering his third season. So I'm really optimistic and kind of bullish on this guy's talents for sure.
I just want to commend you for getting 24 minutes into this podcast without mentioning that he's the son of a Bruin. I think that you really deserve a pat.
Both of his parents went to UCLA. He was a sociology major, an incredibly smart guy. IQ off the chart, and football IQ.
I just knew we were gonna. I just wanted to give you credit for holding off as long as you did. Yeah, kind of going back to what we were talking about. You would like everybody to be a master at their position. You would like everybody to be, this is what I do. I'm great at it. Don't have to worry about it. teams need Kike Hernandez and Chris Taylor. Those guys are never going to be the best shortstop in baseball, the best center fielder in baseball. But hey, I need you to be my guy for a week. I need you to be my guy for a couple of games. Yeah, I can do that. I can hold it down. I think that's probably his future on this team is a guy that fills in and fills in capably at a number of different positions. Look, if he locks down one of those safety spots, awesome, good for him. But he may be a victim of his own versatility.
Yeah, and you go back and watch those games last season. I mean, he really cleaned up a lot of things in the middle of the field, and those were the areas. When you look at the Saints game, they almost blew that one because of deep shots late. I mean, that was one of the more critical areas towards the end of the season as far as just keeping them in games while the running game, the offense could put up points. But the defense, they were the surprise last season. But give Quentin Lake all the credit in the world, and I'm looking for a big season for him. But that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMac_LA. And you can follow the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, at Travis Rogers. And until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.